Greetings, Internet. You are listening to Breaking Change, a new podcast by Justin Searles about software development, tech news, video games, and just generally whatever else is going on. My name is Justin Searles, and I'll be your host for this week. As this is the first episode, if I do a good job, maybe they'll keep me around. So if you receive a survey at the end of the call, I hope that you will rate my hosting 5 stars. And if you don't think that I deserve 5 stars, I hope that you will quietly keep that to yourself. First episode stuff, we got to just get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. And that looks like talking about what's the schedule of this show, what's the format, why are we here? So if you ask somebody for advice on starting a podcast, the first thing they say is the last thing we need is another podcast by a middle-aged white guy in tech. And they would be right. But also, the internet's really big and it can fit a lot of RSS feeds, and I got a lot of impulse to make mouth noises come out, and for them to be available to be listened to, if not listened to. I don't know if you're there right now and you're listening to this. Thank you. But I'm mostly here because my lung and mouth muscles need to get some exercise. And so hopefully the stuff that I share is useful. But anyway, that's so piece number 1 of advice. Don't be yet another middle-aged white guy in tech thinking that his thoughts matter. Don't worry. I'm pretty sure mine don't. But everyone's got to pass the time somehow, and you've got pasta to cook or a dog to walk. So you just need something to fill those ear holes so that you don't start thinking about existential dread and your place in the universe and how we're all going to die someday. Anyway, second piece of advice, though, the number 2 that people give you is consistency. If you want to build an audience, if you want to have a successful podcast, you got to have a consistent release schedule so that listeners can predict when your podcast is going to land in their feed, and they form a habit of, I listen to, my friend Len Testa, his podcast, the Disney Dish, lands every Monday morning. It's the first thing I see every week. And I always listen to it on my Monday, workout when I'm lifting weights. So that's the second piece of advice that I got. And so when we talk about the schedule for this show, you can expect a new episode at exactly the moment you least expect. I'm going to do these when I do them. If I don't have anything to talk about, I'm not going to bother recording a podcast because I'm not going to feel like it. And why do something if you don't feel like it, says me. From my place of relative privilege, and also just not wanting to waste my time or your time. So if I've got something to talk about, then maybe I'll cut a podcast and it'll pop up in your in your feed here. So that seems simple enough. The schedule is it's consistently inconsistent, which is kind of following that advice, I suppose. As for format, well, it'll probably sound kind of familiar. Each episode will kick off, and I'll share a little bit of a life update and so forth. But one thing that's different about this show, because it's called Breaking Change, every time I do an episode, I'll kick it off with a major version bump and announce what the breaking change is for this time in our lives. And as this is, I guess, version 1.0, got to semantically version our podcast episodes. This episode's Breaking Change just marks the initial release of the podcast. So it didn't break anything except for your expectation that Justin Searles doesn't have a podcast. And subsequent episodes, version 2 and so forth, I'll have to think of, hey, what was the breaking change of the week or the month or the quarter? Or you know what? This could be like everybody's Blogspot blog, or WordPress blog, where you post the first post and then a month passes and then you post the second post about, hey, I haven't forgotten about you yet. I'm going to post more. And then there's no more posts. It could be that kind of thing too. There's a lot of that going around. In fact, oddly enough, I recorded an episode of Breaking Change with a couple of my colleagues 6 years ago, Jason Carnes and Neil Lindsay. From Testable. And we loved the name, and we recorded it, and it was kind of a silly, irreverent thing. It wasn't super work related. And we decided not to publish it because we weren't prepared to commit to the cadence that we would need. And it was just a lot of work to edit and stuff, especially when you're trying to coordinate schedules and multiple speakers. So we didn't release it. But yeah, breaking change. Here we go. All right. In terms of format, right? So I'll tell you a little bit about what's new in my life, things that are happening, not to be totally vain, but if you know me, maybe you're interested. And if you want to get to know me, that's one way to do it. I'll also follow up on anything since the last release and share what I've been working on since then that you might be interested in. My buddy Aaron Patterson, you might know him as Tender Love on the internet. Man, Tender Love. That's the guy who should be on radio. This is Tender Love. Maybe just some late night jazz records. I don't know that Aaron listens to jazz. I should ask him. But anyway, okay. So Aaron is infamous for being a talented punter. And my wife, Becky, when she hangs out with Aaron, she frequently gets annoyed with him because he will stare through her while she's talking because you can just tell his brain is constructing puns. And then after she's finished telling a story or whatever, a fully satisfied Aaron will just emit a pun that has tangentially nothing to do with whatever the conversation at hand is. Sorry, Aaron. But, he's actually gotten a lot better at that. So anyway, I have asked my dear friend, Aaron Patterson, to share a pun with me for each episode that I cut. And he's texted me the pun a couple days ago because I thought I was going to record. And it's, I'm looking at it now. And it's in invisible ink. So he sent it in iMessage with invisible ink. So I'm going to read Aaron's pun each episode, and I'm going to put it in a spreadsheet, and I'm going to rank Aaron's puns. So the pun that I share this week will be the number one Aaron Patterson pun thus far, because it's the only one in the list. But that's going to become a more competitive thing, and we'll rank them, and I'll tidy them up or tally them up and figure out, that keeps him busy. Also, everyone loves to hate a pun. All right. After the pun time, we'll get onto the news. It might be Apple news, tech news generally, programming news more specifically, gaming, whatever links and stuff have crossed my desk. Only the news that's fit to pontificate about into a microphone. I'll share my perspective on those things, and probably close out that section with, recommendations, stuff I'm reading, games I'm playing, shows I'm watching, that kind of thing, movies I liked, etc. And then finally, last but not least, I'll read some mail from you, listeners. If you send an email to podcast@searles.co, if you're listening to this and you don't know how to spell Searles yet, I'll learn how to pronounce it someday, by the way. Searles. I'm still getting there. So no shame if you don't know how to spell it. Again, Becky, my wife, she used to be a teacher in a classroom setting. And, first day of school, you always have to teach the kids your name. And if it's not an obvious name, you got to come up with like a whole like motif or something. She would say, it's spelled like pearls, but with an S instead of a P. So the podcast@pearls.co, but just remember to change out the P for the S. And if you type it every time, pearls.co, and then you just backspace 7 or 8 times, and then you hit delete, and then you type the S. That's how you know you're doing it right. So I make sure every time you type my name, you type it out Pearls first, and then you just backspace 5 times, hit back, move left, like cursor left 5 times, then hit backspace, and then hit S. That way you can be confident, because some people, they love sneaking in an extra E right before the terminal S. So SEARLES. And it's been happening my whole life. And I've never met one of those surlies, but I don't want to, because the number of forms that I've had to fill out twice, or medical records that went lost because they were tied to the wrong person. So it's Where was I? Oh, right. Yeah. Why do you need to know my name? So that you can send an email to podcast@searles.co. And of course, I don't have any this week because I didn't even know I was recording a podcast until just now. So you send something, I will answer your question on the air. And if no one sends anything, I might just have GPT-4 generate some fake fan mail. And so if the questions sound weirdly complimentary of me, be suspicious. Send me your hot takes. Just send me hot takes. Yeah, they don't even have to be questions. Just say, hey, I saw this and it sucks. And I'll read it. And then I'll react to it with my own take of whether the thing that you think sucks, or whether I think you suck for thinking the thing sucks. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll find some positive reframe along the way. So since this is a solo podcast, you can go ahead and just expect this to be a little bit weird. Maybe you listen to a whole bunch of solo podcasts. I only listen to one or two. And it's as a format, I mostly listen to panel shows. Accidental Tech Podcast has 3 hosts and they're always talking, or an interview format show like Daring Fireball, John Gruber talk show. It's always John and a guest. And those are interesting, but the format to me has always been a little bit too rote and a little bit too, like, the pacing of it. Hey, don't get me wrong. I listen to a ton of podcasts like this, but I was actually afraid to listen to a solo show because I thought, man, this is just going to be one person's voice echoing in my head. I don't know that I want that. And depending on the person and depending on the voice, maybe you don't want that. So your mileage may vary. You might not have even gotten this far. And if you haven't gotten this far and you're still listening to me, I'd be impressed. But what I have found that I like is that being solo on a podcast, as a listener, there's an opportunity for pregnant pauses, for interesting diversions, for coming, cohering here and there and going back and forth, and having here's a way to sum it up maybe, is I feel like I'm voyeuristically witnessing a dialogue on an interview show or when several panelists, are talking to each other. But when I listen to a solo podcaster, I feel like I'm in dialogue with them. And it makes me feel a little bit less alone. The person I'm thinking of right now, the solo podcasters I've listened to, they don't know me. But I feel more of a connection to them, and I feel more, I think, stake in the things that they're talking about than if they were just chatting with somebody else. And so, maybe you'll get that out of this. One difference is that I don't have a huge following, so you can just shoot me an email at podcast@searles.co, which is like pearls, but with an S instead of a P. If I hadn't mentioned that already. And I will actually read 100% of the emails, and I will reply to 99% of the emails. So if I don't reply to your email, it does mean that you're the only email that I didn't reply to, and you should feel bad. Unless I got super famous and you're listening to version 1 of Breaking Change years later. Because then the calculus on whether or not I can reply to every email may have changed. I doubt it, though. I like to keep things tight, a nice small following. That's my jam. You don't want to go too mainstream, got to be sub pop. All right. So that, let's dive in, I guess. All right. So what's new in life here in sunny Orlando, where it has been gray and cold for the last month? Recording this for you in early January, and I am ready for some sunshine. I am sick of this freezing cold 65 degree Fahrenheit weather. So if you're in the rest of America or most of the Northern Hemisphere, that probably sounds ridiculous. But I have learned that I apparently have no brown fat left. Brown fat, I think, I watched a Vox video, so I'm an expert on this now. Brown fat, I think, is the fat cells that keep you feeling warm even when you're cold. And babies have a lot of it. And that's why babies do a good job surviving the travails of sledding trips and building snowmen and bouncing around outside in the snow. And when you go to a warm place, those brown fat cells, I guess, shrink or something, and they provide less warmth. And so that's why when people move to Florida, within a couple of years, they're walking around in their, sweatshirt with a windbreaker and a winter coat and stuff because it's 60 degrees out. So the idea now of me going up to someplace snowy, like a ski resort or Maine or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the winter is just terrifying. I wouldn't be able to do it. So what's new in Florida? I mentioned Len earlier. Len Testa. He's he runs a company called Touring Plans. Has a podcast, Disney Dish. He's a longtime author. I think 20 editions of the most popular Disney-related tourism book, The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. A fascinating guy. You wouldn't believe it, but he's actually mostly interesting for non-Disney related things. Yeah, fascinating fella. Great software developer, runs an awesome team at his company Touring Plans, where it's also theme park related. You can subscribe and then it will help you generate it. Basically, like if you're a programmer, it doesn't solve it. Comes up with as an efficient guesses as possible for the traveling salesman problem, where I am in a theme park and I need to navigate that theme park efficiently based on the relative distances of all the attractions that I want to hit, as well as the wait times, which are variable not only between attractions, but between attractions at different times of day. So they collect an absurd amount of data, and then they have a whole bunch of number crunching algorithms that go up into the cloud and try to provide the best guess for what is a provably NP complete problem. Or NP hard. I can never remember in algorithmic complexity class the difference between NP hard and NP complete, other than the complete is more hard. So I think they should have gone with NP extreme, if Turing or von Neumann or whoever was like a better marketer. But there you have it. Anyway, head Len over. We made some curry rice. So I made curry rice, 4 pounds of chicken, 4 pounds of onions, a couple pounds of potatoes, a couple pounds of carrots, some golden curry, Japanese curry roux. Japanese curry is a favorite because it's not only tasty, but like most things in Japan, it seems like they would appropriate or take one piece of another gigantic culture. Like how many types of curry are there in Southeast Asia? Probably, I'm just going to say things that I believe are facts that I've learned. But then as soon as I realize, oh shit, I'm recording right now, somebody's going to have evidence that I'm wrong, I backtrack. So as far as I know, the word curry basically just means like sauce or stew or spice, and it could mean any number of flavors. And if you've gone to Indian restaurants, I'm sure you've had lots of different types of curry, or Thai curry, yellow and red and green and massaman and all that. Well, in Japan, like curry has a distinct flavor. There's 1, 2, 3 kind of like these are the Japanese curries. And there's a bottleneck effect because like curry pots were, maintained in naval ships, and every sort of naval ship had a different kind of curry blend, and that's just a handful of types of flavors. And then there's another bottleneck effect in the post-war period as they started to mass market, like S&B and other companies. Ajinomoto, I think, probably makes one. And so there's really just when people say curry in Japan, they really mean just that curry. And even if you're in Japan, you go to a Nepalese restaurant or an Indian restaurant that has like lots of kinds of curry, they all kind of have that like distinctive Japanese curry taste. And for whatever reason, probably because I was there when I was 20 years old and that was my first introduction to eating curry regularly, because it's a great dive bar food. That's the curry that I like. So you serve it up. It's a sloppy stew, it big brown, stains everything as soon as it touches it. Greasy, super healthy, I'm sure. I guess when most people think Japanese food, they think like, oh, it's, raw fish and like, healthy stuff. This is not healthy. So you take a bowl, like a flat bowl, a short bowl, you put some rice on one side, you kind of make a little mound and then you pour the curry on the other side. And then it's like a game similar to the American tradition of I've got a certain number of tortilla chips and a certain amount of salsa, and I want to very carefully allocate the salsa so that I've got just the right amount of salsa for every chip so that I finish the salsa and the chip simultaneously. And you don't end up with the classic hot dog bun problem of those not mapping up. So you have a certain amount of rice, a certain amount of curry, and you use a spoon to eat it, and you just try to mix just enough. You take a little bit of rice, dip it in the curry, scoop up some curry, and there you go. So anyway, I made some curry for Len. What else is going on? Well, one big change is Becky and I have decided after, 16 and a half years of marriage, 20 years dating. Is this our 21st year dating? No, 20th. Yeah. We're right around 20 years dating, taking our relationship to the next level. And I'm scared. I'm not sure if we're going to make it, but I'm hopeful. And that is that I am building her some software for her new business. She has a fitness business called Better with Becky. And the first module, Build with Becky, is about to become a sort of, well, I won't speak to it, but she needs some software to facilitate that business before we launch. So I guess that makes us, the fact I can't tell you about it means that we're in stealth mode. But, if you know anything about building software, if you've got experience building software, there's the implementer, which is me. I'm the developer in this case and the designer. And then there's the product owner or the business. And it's up to her to give me the requirements and tell me what she needs to build, and up to me to as a lifelong consultant who helps people deal with the frustrating, confusing, just bizarre world of building super complex, intangible, invisible, goods. That is software. I'm shepherding her through the process. And we just had a good kickoff meeting this morning where I kind of shared the imagined architecture of the first app of 2 that I'm building for her. And it's going great so far, but push comes to shove. We've got a deadline in place that's an extrinsic deadline. If you're picking a deadline, I've been on the phone with so many people who wanted to build some piece of software, usually a non-technical person or a person who's no longer in a technical role. In my capacity as like a salesperson of a consultancy at Test Double, if I'm on the phone with you and you want something built and you know that I'm a vendor who wants to charge you money to build the thing, you as the person who wants something built are going to be kind of cagey, right? You want to, because trust isn't there yet. If I ask you, all right, customer, tell me about your extrinsic constraints. What pressures are you or your business under so that I know those constraints and I can factor those into how we approach working with you in terms of how many people you need, when we'd start, give you an idea of how long things might take and so on. And that means basically almost always, what's your budget and how much time you got? So you ask these questions and they always get interpolated through the thin membrane of low trust relationships because, this might be the first time that he or she and I have ever talked. And what they hear is, all right, they're asking my budget, and that means I should give as low a number as is feasible to indicate that I don't want to pay a lot of money. Because if I tell them $10 million, they'll say, oh, wow, I found a way to build this for you for $9,999,000, right? They don't want to get screwed. And most software agencies will screw you. Test Double will not. So I don't have sponsor reads on this podcast, but if you go to Test Double, as if we test 2 times.com, you can learn more. You just don't get a straight answer if you ask a prospective client, hey, what's your budget? So they want to be cagey. It becomes one of those like a game where everyone's kind of like pushing back and forth and trying not to say something because they want the vendor to say what the price is going to be, as if there's just a fixed price things take, or not a fixed amount of time things take. You'll ask about, hey, what's the deadline? Or like, when do you need this by? They'll always say yesterday. They'll say as soon as possible. I'm like, no, what I mean is at what point will there be like some consequence if this thing doesn't exist? Maybe, the opportunity cost of a new trade show or something like that. If you're not ready by that date, then you miss out on the subsequent sales season. And maybe that you can quantify that. Or maybe if I don't upgrade this dependency and it goes end of life and it goes down, then this creates this legal liability or maybe continuity operations or something like that. So all that good stuff I'm now baby birding to Becky as my product owner to try to suss out of her what I need to make informed and useful decisions about like how to prioritize and what kind of architecture is appropriate and all that stuff. And so I'm going to be sharing probably some of those things as we go because it's a great opportunity to kind of reflect outside of that relationship, just you and me. I don't know if Becky's going to listen to this. That might make that complicated. If so, hey, Becky, I'll just tell you when to fast forward, Becky, okay? Everyone else, you can keep listening. So yeah, I'm currently building two apps for her. Hopefully we can kind of keep things cordial and we get along well, and it's a good opportunity for me to practice having fun. All right. So let's get into follow-up. Obviously don't have anything to follow up from version 0 of this podcast because I didn't record one, but I'll share some recent stuff that I did. And this will all be in the show notes. I think I earned a sip of water there. If you, excuse me, I decided that I was going to take a sip of water in the middle of a sentence because I am a seasoned radio guy. And I know that what the people want to hear is weird, spicy bubbles and gurgling, gulping sounds while they're, taking their walk. So if I can offer that to you. Anyway, follow up. Last month, I did a YouTube called Secrets of Great Conference Talks. It's a top 10 style video. It's got a lot of stock videos in it, so it's fun and upbeat. But basically, this was me reading from a script saying, hey, these are the 10 things that I think about when I'm either formulating the idea for a talk or proposing that talk or designing it or practicing it. And trying to relay some advice, mostly stuff that people tend to not talk about or think about very much. But as I've become more distinctive in my own predilection and style around conference presentations, I thought, hey, maybe I could highlight some of the weird things I do and why. So you might want to check that out. I don't know. The other piece, it was kind of a New Year's resolution post, I suppose, is actually about how goals don't work, so don't bother setting them. It's called Only You Can Give Meaning to Your Career, and that's over at Testable's blog. Basically, this goes hand in hand with conference talks, but conference talks for me were one way for me to not think about look, I would never set a goal saying I'm going to do a conference talk this year, and I would work with my manager to identify conferences, and I'm going to, submit to 5 of them or whatever. Because as soon as I write down a goal, especially when a manager is telling me that I have to have goals, I would always, hem and haw about it. I hate doing the work of writing the goal and make sure it's smart, right? Or Rumba, or whatever fit into an OKR framework, whatever it is. And then there'd be a multiple review sessions with the manager to make sure that okay, we're on the same page. These are your goals. I approve these goals. As soon as that happened, I would lose all motivation because the work was in setting the goal. I want the manager's approval for their expectation. And it takes so much effort and energy just to get on the same page about what the goals are in advance that all I've really done is create for myself something to now dread. I feel no motivation because intrinsically, any energy or gusto that I had went into defining the goal. And now as soon as that goal is defined, I've got it starts an 11-month, 25-day counter until the goals are due, right? Your annual goals, you got to get them done. And now I've just got this thing I'm dreading that I don't feel intrinsic motivation for anymore because I just had a big back and forth about how I was going to measure it and, how it would tie back to strategic objectives or whatever. And So not only am I dreading it, that means like I'm distracted from other stuff because I feel stressed or I feel guilty when I don't spend time on it, even though like, it's these goals usually have nothing to do with like whatever the primary job that I have is. And so that's not really productive. And I think a lot of people, especially a lot of creative developer, deep thinker, empathic folks like I've surrounded myself with over the course of my career, a lot of them feel similarly. And so rather than think prospectively about what am I going to do in the future and deciding in advance, I think a lot of the best things in my career, in my life, have come from knowing that I actually, unlike some people, I cannot predict the future. And so trying is sort of, a waste of time. Instead, I pause. I've trained myself to pause every month, 2 months, 3 months, and look back and say, hey, what was that all about? What did I learn this month? Or what did I learn this week? Or what really challenged me over the last quarter? Or like, I'll think back, like, what was the thing I was really stressed out about a few weeks ago? How did that turn out? Because we all generate these negative fantasies, these worries. And I think the more introspective you are, the louder, those worries are in terms of magnitude and frequency of thinking about them. And it's important to remember like 99% of them aren't going to come true. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't worry. I mean, as if you can decide, right? It means you should probably be mindful of the fact that like the act of worrying is the thing that makes it less likely to happen. And so we had to worry well is what I think about. So I'll look back and I'll say, okay, well, I was really worried about this conversation, or I was really worried about this conflict and how it would resolve, and it resolved. And then that retrospective look, right, is I can look at that, or I can look at an achievement or something new that I learned. And I say, look, what can I take away from this? What about this conflict? What about this bug that I fixed? What about this feature that I developed is totally unlike anything I've ever done before? And if I can find something distinctive, something unique to my personal experience so far in my career, I'll highlight it and I'll put it in a little like basket of goods where I think, okay, maybe it's time for me to plant a flag about this thing. And I'll, planting a flag is just a term that I use to mean I want to remember this. I want to remember, in 2015, I did a talk called How to Stop Hating Your Tests. And it was one of my most practical talks. It was also kind of like a top 10 sort of thing. It was fun. I did it. I built the talk in System 9, classic Mac OS, even though it was 2015, using like AppleWorks. And it's kind of like a Family Feud style. So it was all 4x3 and kind of like, retro pixel art kind of design. But the idea was like, these are the lessons that I've learned from several years of consulting with clients who had very, very late stage automated test suite problems. And I had identified patterns between them. And I was like, man, like it seems like every team runs into these infinitely long builds, these builds of integration tests that just get longer and longer and longer. And so in this talk, I used the opportunity to give a conference talk at RubyConf to kind of just point out those lessons that I'd learned and really, really work hard at crystallizing what was the kernel of truth here. What was the thing that really stood out? And for my own sake, to be able to have like, at the end of my career, I guess I would imagine maybe I often, whenever I talk about this, I talk about the fact I'm not having kids because I think a lot of people look to their kids as their legacy. And since I don't have that, but I still have this very large legacy gland, I think, well, at the end of my career, what do I want to be left behind? What in the leather-bound book collection of Justin Searle's shit, what's there? And I think it would be nice, based on like, say, the last 3 years of helping out clients with these really thorny, painful testing problems, it would be nice if I had planted a flag of that moment in time. Like, here's the crystallized version, the hard rock of what this was all about, and done in a way that was, polished up a little bit. like, it looked nice. It was presentable. It was clear. It summarized, but it didn't sacrifice the depth or the nuance. And it played with the tensions and the trade-offs inherent. It's always reflective of the real experience. And whether it's a talk or a blog post or a journal entry or I don't know, macaroni art, with Elmer's glue, it doesn't really matter what the creative work is. It just matters that I sit with it and that I mark the occasion somehow. And so that's how I wound up being a thought leader, I suppose, is because I really took it upon myself to give meaning to my career in this way. So anyway, I wrote about that process. If listening to me talk about it for 5 minutes was insufficient, you can go check out that blog post. Let's see. I've got a newsletter. It's called Searles of Wisdom, to remind you that Searles rhymes with pearls, I suppose. You can see that at justin.searles.co/newsletter. Again, URLs are in the show notes. Look at me, like a podcaster, referring to the show notes. I have not yet figured out how to make the podcast XML scheme. I assume that this is just something where it's like a plain text thing and I'll just paste all of my notes into it, but we'll find out. So if I keep referencing show notes and then they don't manifest, please email me at podcast@searles.co. And that email at least works. I'm pretty sure that I haven't tested. Oops. Anyway, my newsletter last month was about a book that I'm reading called The Courage to Be Disliked, and what it's like to read books in a foreign language. So I'm reading that book in Japanese, and what I'm finding is that I don't have enough cognitive capacity to both read the book in Japanese and also think very critically about the content that it has throughout it. So I'm finding myself like just falling for this self-help book, hook, line, and sinker. But anyway, yeah, it's a good book. Alfred Adler, he's a German psychiatrist. And this is a philosophy book written in the Socratic dialogue style, which, from Greek, Socrates, from Greece. But it's written by a Japanese fella, two Japanese people. So I'm reading the original version in Japanese. So, of course, I'm American, so I just love the cosmopolitan angle to this, that this particular philosophy had to kind of get titrated through a psychiatrist in the 19th century in a format that was developed by the ancient Greeks. There's something kind of poetic about that. All right. Other thing, I just posted this. I asked, so I'm not, Ruby Kaigi is in Okinawa, which is the island. You might know it as having a continuous and very large U.S. military presence since World War II. But it's an island that is quite far away from Honshu and the main islands of Japan. The indigenous people there, I think, are genetically pretty distinct from the rest of Japan. It was, I do not remember when Japan initially colonized Okinawa, but it was like not prehistorical. And so the Ruby Kaigi is going to be down there. I've never been. I've always wanted to go because it's tropical. People live there a long time. I hear the food's really good. It's intentionally designed as a vacation destination. And so whereas like a lot of Japan has sort of been snookered into being a tourism center, right? It wasn't necessarily designed. Kyoto was not designed to be a tourist city so much. Or Osaka for that matter. Like a lot of these are just like normal workaday cities. Like you go to Tokyo, you can have a great time in Tokyo, but it's not like got a theme park downtown and a whole bunch of attractions to do. Like most of Tokyo is just neon lights with boring offices inside of them and sleepy apartments in this huge urban sprawl. And then we get, they receive millions and millions of foreign guests a year. And so these cities tend to get clogged up by just the throngs of foreign visitors. And it puts a lot of strain on their infrastructure and their cities. And it's amazing how hospitable and welcoming our friends in Japan are. But one of the things about Okinawa that's interesting is that its economy has always been, at least in the post-war period, like very much geared around both serving and interacting with the Americans on that base there. So like from a perspective of a Westerner, English is readily available everywhere. It's easy to get around. They're very familiar with people who are unfamiliar with their customs being all over the place. And so it's a little bit like kind of like Japan is always easy mode, but it's even easy mode than that for getting around and understanding your way. So hopefully if you've been thinking about going to Ruby Kaigi, the kind of preeminent Ruby conference in Japan, but you've been nervous maybe about your lack of Japanese language or like the labyrinthian traffic networks or something like that, Okinawa in particular poses a tremendous on-ramp to go into Kaigi for the first time. But the other aspect, right, is, Okinawa is meant to be a vacation destination, both internationally and domestically. And so there's lots of resorts, there's lots of things to do, there's lots of just entertainment everywhere. It's of course it's laid back. And so I hope that you'll consider coming with me to Okinawa in it's May 15th to 17th. Early bird tickets are not yet on sale, but when they do come on sale, they will be surprisingly cheap. And at least if history is any precedent. And they do have a call for proposals if you're a speaker or interested in becoming a speaker that is open till the end of the month. The Kaigi does an amazing job of being very welcoming to international guests. So they encourage speakers, even Japanese native speakers, to give their presentations in English if they're able. So they have almost always at least one English language talk in every track at every time slot. But they also pay for translators, so you can get a little earpiece and listen to any of the Japanese presentations with live translation into English. It's all very professional, and the activities that they do before and after, and the parties which you can sign up for online typically and RSVP a slot are all just fantastic. So go to Kaigi, have a great time, hang out with me, say hi, see Aaron. Becky will be there too, so we're gonna have a party. Becky and I are actually thinking about taking the ferry from Kagoshima, an overnight ferry. I've never done an overnight ferry before, which I guess is like a cruise, but with less fun. So yeah, now I got to do it. All right. So I think it is time. Yes, now it is time for the puns. I'm going to read this pun as I hover over the invisible text that Aaron sends me. He sent me 2 text messages Saturday at 3:55 p.m., both invisible text. I will read them verbatim in as neutral a tone as I can muster, and then you will judge the pun. Two puns, it looks like. Here we go. Breaking Change podcast, where it's a feature, not a bug. Breaking Change? Sorry, I didn't carry cash. I don't carry cash. Let me read that again. Sorry, I've screwed it up. Breaking Change? Sorry, I don't carry cash. You know what? I suspect that Aaron intended for the second one to be the canonical pun of the episode, because that is much more of an Aaron pun. So I'm opening up my spreadsheet here. Get it in there. First pun, version 1, Breaking Change. Sorry, I don't carry cash. I'll let him know that not all the puns have to do with the title of the show. But, sometimes you got to warm up. So here we go. Breaking Change. Sorry, I don't carry cash. Currently the number 1 best pun of the program goes to Aaron Patterson. All right. Breaking Change puns. Got to save that document. Thus concludes the pun portion of the episode. So if you've been, I'm always going to do my best to provide a content warning before puns. It's my commitment to you to be as inclusive as possible. And I know a lot of people do not enjoy puns. And so I want to just clear the air and get them out of here as fast as I can. So, all right. Puns, check. Next up, let's talk about some news. Why do I go into crooner voice for what is to be the most dun 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 news at 11? All right. Well, the big news right now, being early January 2024, is that the Vision Pro is coming out soon. Apple's Vision Pro represents in my opinion, the most significant platform release since the original iPhone. They have indicated that just like with the original iPhone, where, Steve Jobs got on stage and said that his goal was just to sell 1 million of them. And if they just sold 1 million of them, it would only be, a small amount of the market, but really add up in the first year. And they did that, and then they blew it away, of course. And I think that the iPhone's trajectory was leaps and bounds faster and higher than they ever expected. But Vision Pro seems like they're preparing for the same kind of start small, roll out trajectory that they initially had in mind for the iPhone. So what I expect to happen is Vision Pro is going to come out. We just learned that its pre-orders go January 19th at 8 a.m. on the Apple Store app. I suspect you're going to need to order it through the app. I'd be shocked if you could order it through the website, simply because they got to face scan you, right? Because they've got these little, if you don't know what the Vision Pro is, go find a video. Google it, Vision Pro, and there's a video, and they'll tell you all about it. It's a don't call it VR AR goggle. That is totally a VR goggle that acts like an AR goggle because it's got a lot of fancy cameras to make it look like you're actually looking through real life. It's even got a screen on the outside to show your eyeballs so that you don't look too much like a creepazoid, even though you're totally going to look like a creepazoid to everyone around you. But it portends a future, right, where there will be, we're just wearing glasses, just little spectacles, and those spectacles are somehow going to fill up our entire field of vision when they need to, but otherwise we'll still be present in the world around us. Ambient computing, spatial computing. Who knows where that's going to lead? All I'm confident of is Apple is going to not let this go and not let it fail. And when you're the biggest company in the world, you can allow things to not fail by just plowing money and time into them and continuing to iterate. Which I say as Meta, one of the other biggest companies in the world, also plowing tons of money into something that they don't want to allow fail, is nevertheless probably doomed to fail because they have no product sense or idea of what they're doing. I dropped a thing. I don't know if you can hear that yet. I have to work out the gain on this microphone. I've never liked it. I have a bad habit of drifting my mouth away from the mic. Anyway, Vision Pro's coming out soon. Am I going to pre-order one? Yes. Am I already worried it won't somehow come on delivery day of February 2nd? Yes. Do I have calendar events for that morning of the 19th? Yes. And the night before? Also, yes. This is how I roll with Apple pre-order stuff. So get used to it. I have another product that I actually, I bought on my brother Jeremy's recommendation. Called an X-Real Air 2. This product just came out last November. The Air 1 was, I don't know, a year or two prior. And these look like glasses. They look like, goofily thick glasses and Coke bottle glasses. And you just plug in a USB-C cable to them, and then they can be a 1080p monitor. That's just mirrored in both eyes. So it doesn't move around, doesn't do anything fancy, but I can go anywhere I like. If I'm working from a club or a coffee shop or whatever, I can take my MacBook Air. I have an M2 MacBook Air, and I can take these X-Real Air 2 glasses. I just plug the glasses into the MacBook. I can turn the MacBook brightness all the way down. And because these have a light blocking shield attachment that I usually keep on, I don't look like a total doofus. I look kind of like a doofus, but I can just sort of stare into space, keep my neck in a neutral position, not jack my neck all up, also not be straining my vision in a sunny Florida, outdoor environment, against a relatively dim screen. With the M2 MacBook Air has a dimmer screen than the MacBook Pro. I think 500 nits or something. And yeah, it's great. It's only 1080p, so it's not like Retina. It means my windows have to be kind of all maximized for me to do anything, but I can code and I can write text, so I can get a lot done. So I've been using these X-Real Air 2s since November, and I've been taking them with me everywhere. And I have something to say to everyone who's about to buy a Vision Pro and then go use it at Starbucks is people are going to think you are a fucking weirdo. So, you could read the book courage to be disliked and get over it. And that's kind of what I chose to do. I said, hey, I'm wearing these glasses and I'm staring off into space. It's going to look like I'm looking right at you, but don't worry, I can't see you. I'm just being a freakazoid. And, people in general think it's entertaining mostly. Of course, these glasses that I wear, they don't have cameras on them, and the Vision Pro will be able to take spatial video. So there may be memes, right, in the future when this thing comes out. It's like, hey, everyone's they're stalking you. They're making 3D video of you that they're putting on the internet. Of course, the Vision Pro is going to blink or something, or try to show passersby when they're potentially being captured, so that we don't repeat the glass hole incident of Google Glasses, which, God, over 10 years ago, right? I'm sure that Apple's terrified of that. But fortunately for Apple, the Vision Pro is tethered with a big battery that you have to lug everywhere with you. And they're also big and heavy, so they're probably not going to have too many people walking around with these things. So hopefully that's not a real problem, at least in the short term, and the culture around this stuff will have time to catch up. So yeah, that's the big thing this month. Another news item, well, it's new to me, is I finally got GPT Plus. I've been using the API and writing a lot of scripts against GPT-4, but I was like, you know what? I want to try I got this new action button on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, the big one. And I need something to do with this action button. And I would love to be able to just bind that to have a version of Siri that did things more good and talked in gooder English, and I could converse with. And so that's what I did, is I bound my action button to the shortcut for start a voice conversation with the official ChatGPT app. And that starts a GPT-4 conversation that not only opens the app and I can talk to it and it talks back to me, and it's surprisingly uncannily good, but also it uses the live notification. It kind of abuses the live notification, where those notifications where you get like an Uber or a Lyft on the lock screen and you're tracking the progress. Those notifications, it apparently can transmute audio somehow. And so even though it's not a call, it's not set as a phone call or a Zoom call, it's not using that notification API. It's using this live notification to keep that conversation going even after you've locked the screen. So you can talk to it, you just start the conversation, then you can lock the screen, and as long as you've allowed the live notification, you can keep talking to it. And you can even plug it in, I found, into CarPlay. And I literally I talked to it the whole way to where I was driving, because I was meeting friends I was having Len over for curry, and he wanted to watch a movie, and I was trying to ask it for, hey, give me some recommendations for movies based on these criteria. And we were just talking back and forth about the movies. It went great. It's a really cool, it's a creepy, because GPT-4 is kind of slow. It takes like a little bit of time for it to work up its reactions and its answers, similar to my brain, or maybe yours. And so we have all these, ums and ahs, affectations in our voice to buy time. And so it does that. It buys time by, stretching things out. It doesn't need a glass of water, which is what I need. So I'm going to go move my mouth away from the microphone, drink a little bit of water, and then move it back towards the microphone. We're going to see how this goes. I'll be right back. Okay, how was that for you? Good, I hope. All right. So, yeah, GPT-4, I tried, the first thing I want to try is always like, can I use this for Japanese language practice? So I talk to it in Japanese, and it responds in white guy voice Japanese. And I was like, whoa, that's my thing. And it's got this very thick American accent, and yet grammatically perfect, structured completely, just right on. The pitches and the pitch accent is all right. And I was like, what the hell? So I went onto the GPT superfan prompt engineering subreddit, yada, yada. And they're all like, oh yeah, well, these voices were apparently trained in English. And so they don't speak foreign languages natively. They speak them as if they are English speakers speaking the language, which is a fascinating, fucked up thing. This is an explicit podcast, I've decided, as of, whenever I first said F word. So anyway, that's pretty fucked. Yeah, now that I know I can just like talk to this thing in CarPlay or on my own time whenever I like, when I was taking a walk. Now I'm like, all right, well, conversation partners, so I've made some great friends over the years. I don't, So we live in Columbus, Ohio. There is in Marysville, Ohio, Honda has had a plant for a long time. And they have a lot of folks who do 3-year tours of duty as Honda engineers who go and they move their families to Ohio. And because of the way visas work, it's very often their spouse or often a wife who is not allowed to work. And so they're kind of forced out of the workforce to live in America, usually raising kids or something. And we'd run into them at Starbucks all the time. And Becky in particular, she would go to Starbucks more than me. And so she'd see them and say, hey, apparent Japanese housewife who's speaking in, what sounds like a Japanese accent. How would you like to go out every week to a Starbucks or something with my husband so he can have conversation practice? Which, kudos to Becky. That took some bravery and some trust. And that's how I got a series of fantastic conversation partners over the years of people who had, they were in America, they wanted to learn English, and I was in America and I wanted to learn Japanese. And so we'd develop these correspondences, and now even today, all of them have moved back to Japan. COVID kind of put a kibosh on this whole system for a while. And we still text each other, especially like, one of my friends, Junko, she's back in the workforce and she's doing marketing and PR. And so whenever she has a product that she needs to translate into English, she'll run stuff by me and I'll run stuff by her. And it's wonderful to have this kind of relationship. And you learn learn about them, learn about the kids. You talk about stuff that they want to talk about. Well, normal people talk about stuff that the other person wants to talk about. I talk about what I want to talk about, and then I just kind of gauge reactions. It's my patented conversation style. You think about that, precious experiences. When I was an intern at Hikone City Hall in 2005 over the summer, leading up to my study abroad semester, my only the only thing that approximated real work that wasn't just being kind of like the designated gaijin for the city, it was just like show up at events and, move my hands in a certain way or go on, kind of little field trips. The only real work I did was I led English conversation groups. I had a group of, several groups of older people who were wanting to kind of challenge themselves with English in retirement. I had a group of, high school students who wanted to improve their English language ability. GPT-4 is already so damn good at taking language in one input and giving it to another, translating it to another, having conversation in any number of countless languages. And of course, for languages that don't have a lot of training data, it won't be as good as quickly, but Japanese is right up there, probably in the top 5 in terms of content on the internet. And it's, are we going to have conversation partners anymore? Will people travel around the world? There's apps, I forget the names, but there are apps to find conversation partners. Like, is anyone going to really bother when you could just, from the comfort and privacy of your own action button, have a conversation partner at the ready? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And this is actually a theme that I'm going to keep drilling into over the course of the next couple of years. Is I am very interested in, as all these AI tools and as like Apple Vision with the Vision Pro, as these things enable stuff like, for example, live translation or the subtitleification of everything around us, it is certainly going to reduce the number of people who want to learn a language or bother to learn a language. And much in the same way that I'm sure that we bred fewer horses because once we had, the internal combustion engine vehicles, people would just buy cars. And so we didn't need so many carriages to be horse drawn. And so, yes, fewer people ended up breeding and raising and caring for horses, but it's not like horses went extinct. It's not like we just stopped riding horses altogether. It just became a niche because functionally you didn't have to ride a horse to get somewhere. I suspect that's what is going to happen to second language education in the world. It's going to seem silly that we're going to teach kids a foreign language when like they could just put their glasses on and have like a universal Babelfish kind of translator thing. Now, it might someday, 30, 40, 50 years from now, get to the point where not only can you translate language, but you can somehow translate culture in real time in a way that, if the eyeballs on the outside of your Vision Pro are fake, maybe it'll know when to make certain gestures and gesticulations, appropriately. But like, there's still a big difference between live translation of literal language and understanding and appreciating a context and a culture. And, even when you translate it perfectly, if you like, we were watching a Japanese language movie and there were several bits about where like the joke was really like playing around with honorifics, like a female character using way too formal of a word, and then having to go down a level and then go down another level and go down another level. And the subtitles in English didn't know what to do with this because we just, we don't have 5 different levels of politeness with which one can address themselves or refer to themselves. That stuff gets lost in translation. And I think that the same tools, the same technologies, AI, AR, VR, all this ambient computing stuff, the same building blocks can be used to build really compelling tools to supercharge one's ability to learn a language if only they decided they wanted to. And so that's where my attention's at. That's where I want to build apps for the Vision Pro. I don't know what I'll build quite yet, but I know it's going to have something to do with, I want to build a toolbox. Looking at the APIs that are available, the frameworks that Apple provides, what can I do here that's going to make me able to learn Japanese more quickly, relate to people faster, commit it to memory, get better at this language, figure out the grammar, whatever it is. And not just go for the lowest common denominator of like live translation services, because I'm sure that's going to be, talk about getting Sherlocked, that's going to be an operating system level thing at some point. Google's already demoed it 5 years ahead of schedule with some silly demo that does the live translation, the subtitleification of your life. So anyway, yeah, working on GPT-4 is interesting. Vision Pro is interesting. Those two things I think are the two technologies that are probably going to be at the core of what I find fascinating about the tech world this year. But who knows? Maybe I'll get surprised. I'm just blown away though at the GPT-4's ability to make connections that Google has no hope of ever figuring out. So for example, I remembered my tweezers are getting dull because as I get older, I get like more back hair and shoulder hair and stuff. Cause I don't know, being a man with genes that are dying and the telomerase is, expiring on them. All these stupid, like wiry hairs that like, they get under your shirt and they kind of itch you, and it's harder to pluck those. So that, I got some Tweezerman tweezers. Apparently Tweezerman is good, but not great. And like the tweezers are dull. And I remembered a few years ago, I was listening to John Gruber's talk show podcast, and he had a fellow named Merlin Mann on. Merlin's Twitter handle is or was Hot Dogs Ladies. I don't know why. I met him in person. I actually spoke at a conference, and he watched me give a talk once. He's famous in podcast land, but you've probably never heard of him unless you're listening to this because you're also a resident of podcast land. But anyway, Merlin talked about these tweezers that he loved. He talked about nail clippers that he loved. Nail clippers that never got dull. And I misremembered that as tweezers. So I was talking to GPT-4, using the voice thing. I was like, hey, I need these tweezers that Merlin Mann referenced and in this show. And all I know is that they don't get dull. I first tried to Google this. I Googled 5 different queries and I got nothing, nowhere, no how, just no hope. No transcript was available. I asked GPT-4, like right away, first response, oh, it's this brand. Here's a link. I was like, what the hell? That's what I mean, where I was like, this is really like, yes, you can be a downer about AI and say, oh, this is just a statistical model predicting what the next token or morpheme of language should be one after a time. But like, at a certain point, like, isn't that kind of just what humans are too? I'm just in the middle of a sentence predicting what the next sound that I should make out of my mouth is. Like, these are sort of distinctions without a difference after a certain point, especially if I'm getting, the tweezers I want. Oh, and the end of the story, by the way, clicking the Amazon link and then going to the store of the people who made the nail clippers, they do also make tweezers. And so I bought some of the tweezers, and I will maybe some follow up for next time. I'll tell you how those tweezers are. That'll be the back hair update for version 2. All right. Next up in the news, the workflow team left Apple again. Left Apple. Okay, so if you're not familiar, in 2014, I want to say, there's an app called Workflow. It hit iOS, and it let you do stuff that we now know as shortcuts. So you could building blocks, you could interact with certain applications, you could do these automations that were like not possible out of the box, because there's nothing like Apple script, and certainly you can't just code as a user of an iPhone. And so Workflow is really cool. Apple saw the appeal, and I think in 2017, they bought it. So Apple bought Workflow, incorporated the small team who'd built Workflow, and then they re-released it to the public as Shortcuts. And now, because Apple owns Shortcuts, it has all these like low-level ties into the operating system that a normal application would lack the privilege for. And Apple in general, the major cases of it buying apps and then just pushing those apps back out again have been that sort of thing where like, oh, this is cool, this app is great, but it could only be really great if we tied it into the operating system in a privileged way that other apps can't do. The other example that comes to mind is TestFlight. TestFlight was a third-party app to push out distributions of new applications, but because there's no such thing as a third-party app store, it was very hinky in how it pulled that off. So TestFlight now bought by Apple, and it can distribute, beta versions of applications to testers remotely, wirelessly and stuff in ways that it couldn't have before. So yeah, Workflow became Shortcuts. That team has really done a lot of amazing stuff. Shortcuts it's goofy, it's finicky. The UI is fine. It doesn't respond to as somebody who writes programming with, a keyboard and words, it's so frustrating to have to drag drop something that itself is like fighting you at every step. And whenever I encounter a UI bug in Shortcuts, I just want to throw my hands in the air and just like, give me a freaking terminal, please. Excuse me, give me a fucking terminal. This is an explicit podcast. I already forgot. All right. So the news though, the Shortcuts Workflow people have left again. And they left again because they want to, quote unquote, reimagine how desktop computers work using generative AI. And this, I think, is really interesting. I think if you think about what's wrong with Siri right now, Siri has a discrete number of things it knows how to do and a discrete number of
I found some web results. I can show them if you ask again from your iPhone.
I just triggered my HomePod. I don't know if you were able to hear that, but she had opinions. All right. So now as a podcaster, I have to learn to not use the wake words for any of the 3 magical cylinders that we all have in our homes. An assistant can, like the one that Apple makes. Ugh. I don't. I'll just call it no. All right. An assistant has like a certain number of inputs. You don't have to say the exact phrase to add a reminder with the assistant, but you have to say something like maybe there's 20 ways that you could phrase it that are more or less hard coded. Like it clearly doesn't know real grammar at a deep level. Or if it does, it's very much algorithmically divined. There's like different ways it'll kind of jumble words together until it can find something. You imagine when I imagine a Siri request reaching Apple servers, I imagine like a game of Plinko where like your words kind of come in and then it bounces around, like the little disc bounces around over and over, and then it lands in a hole, and that hole is, this is the function to call, like the add a reminder function or the create calendar event function. Like there's a discrete number of inputs and outputs, and those outputs are the commands. What commands do I run for the set of variables that the person communicated by their voice? Like this is all kind of like just a fancy IVR system, like a voice operated when you call an 800 number and you kind of like say, hey, I'm calling about a MacBook, or I'm calling to buy insurance. And it routes you to the right department. It's just kind of like that is what my perception of how Siri is probably engineered. And like large language models blow that out of the water. Like, why would you have a discrete set of possible inputs for humans, which have an infinite number of ways that they might communicate something, when you could have an LLM that could just has taken every single possible permutation of how humans might communicate about a topic and how they're implemented, how large language models work, right? Is like they emulate the kind of pattern of like a neural net where you take in those unstructured, arbitrary, silly, just diffuse inputs, and they kind of go through, these stronger ties, weaker ties, these little like imagine neuron synapses almost, like just think of it as if it was biology, even though it's not. And it comes out the other end in some way that is eerily recognizable because it's doing all this pattern matching and so forth. It makes total sense that you should be able just to talk to your computer and have that computer, like we still have the discrete number of actions because software only has a discrete number of features, but having a multivariate, diffuse, just like, like an unstructured way to form these queries. And then the only thing that the program in the middle has to do, the only thing that the LLM, containing program needs to do is just route. The answer being asked to that LLM at every single point is listen to the user and then figure out which of your 1,000 discrete functions that user wants to do. And so I have a lot of hope that that's probably the tree up which the former workflow team is barking. Because if Siri is this screwed up, they have a huge opportunity to make like, what if Siri was good though? And to start with Mac OS, which is a more open operating system where they can actually do some accessibility automations and so forth. Like I could totally imagine this team a couple years from now, like just me saying to my computer, hey, dingus, make me an event for next Tuesday that looks like this other one and do it after my haircut. And it's going to be at, the Starbucks on Vinland Road. And then boom, it's just like there, right? It's unstructured. It's maybe combines multiple requests, doesn't freak out about it. I think that's plausible. And so I think that's really interesting. Next up. So I wrote a Ruby gem called Standard in 2018. And what Standard does is it configures Rubocop, which is a style formatter and a linter, to take code and make it a little bit more, check for certain safety things and also make the style more consistent so it's more readable. And the thing about Standard is, if you use Standard, you can't change those rules. There's one rule set and it's unconfigurable. And the reason it's unconfigurable is that the act of carefully sweating, how do I configure the which rules to turn on and which rules to set and what the style should be. All that is like a huge waste of time. It's a huge potential time sink, especially for people who are like have way too fancy of opinions of what clean code, what good code looks like. And if you're on a team, forget about it because then you're just going to argue about it. And so that's why Standard exists. We jokingly call it bike shed proof because you don't have time to argue about the particulars when you've got a real thing to build. So David Heinemeier Hansen, affectionately known as DHH in the community, he opened an issue on Rails, and the issue title is add, parenthetic, a very basic, end parentheses, Rubocop by default. And first reply, Justin Coe, a fellow that I met at Rocky Mountain Ruby in 2011. I don't think I've seen him since, but I hope he's doing well. Was to say, well, this is just going to be the the bike shed, the mother of all bike sheds, the bike shed to end all mother things. Oof. Anyway, it's been a long week. he pointed out standard would be better. I chimed in, hey, this is what standard's all about, yada, yada. Aaron chimed in. He said, hey, I would support doing standard. Then David tried standard and he disagreed with a few things. And I don't think, look, if you have opinions and you care about the aesthetics of programming, you can't possibly fathom that you're going to use like some unconfigurable tool to style your code for you. And you're not going to have a few disagreements. I have disagreements. There's several things that standard does that are just arguments with the community that I was like, you know what? I give up. I'm going to take the L on this one. And now we're going to have, what's one that I hate in standard? Standard makes you put on multi-line statements. The period doesn't hang off of the end of the line. It begins the next line. So the periods are all aligned, I guess. I really dislike that. I like the period right off the end of the right parentheses. Call me crazy. So David texted me and he was like, hey, here's these 4 or 5, 6 things. I went through them one by one, but at the end of the day, I was like, you're not going to agree with all of them. And so it's kind of like take it or leave it. And as we had a long conversation just via text, and honestly, like where I got to is like, you know what? Come to think of it, having a default for Ruby on Rails that was like so strict that like this is the only blessed coding style, that sounds ridiculous. Like I'm the guy who made standard, and I would never want to foist it non-consensually on a programmer and tell them like your style has to be this way. And so that's where David landed there in that thread. He posted his own. I'll have links to all this stuff in the show notes if I can figure out how to XML them. He posted a minimal RuboCop config that's going to serve as sort of the extension point. It'll ship with Rails, and then you'll be able to overwrite individual methods or individual rules inside of it. And as sort of the new baseline, he calls RuboCop Rails Omakase. Which is a reference you will either get or not get. And that is, for the purposes of this conversation, fine. And then he wrote a post afterwards called A Writer's Ruby about aesthetics and why they matter and why you should have the freedom to have a house style, so to speak. So anyway, a lot of people contacted me when this was going on because it was seen as like yet another like David versus Justin on the internet, and people like the drama and stuff. And, people have strong opinions about David, and that's all fine. But in this one, I think he's right. I think this is a great way to do it. I think having a starting point, a default that gets people on the path of some kind of tool that provides a lot of linting safety and some measure of consistency. This is like, that's the friendlier thing for beginners. It should be there. You can turn it off with a command line flag, and I'm sure a lot of people will. But telling everyone that they have to style an exactly particular way when they maybe don't understand the value of like why something like standard is good, that seems appropriate. So I'm with David on this one. I think his blog post is good. This is the right way to do it. Now, if there's one thing I would ask, I think it would be really fucking rad if there was a tac standard style option for Rails 8. This is all targeting Rails 8.0 and up. Because then, we'd have higher adoption. People could opt into standard. I think that's what really matters here. So he was open to it, but doesn't like the idea of having both a RuboCop binary and a standard binary because they'd be different. And then it would be difficult to document, like this is the command you run to run your styling. So I might take a second pass to try to convince him of that. But for now, I totally agree with where he landed. That was news. I guess I was tangentially related to that one. Yeah, everything else I have to say is really just observations on this app that I'm building. So I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm realizing now I need sponsors so that I can break up this podcast and take breaks. Here I am sitting an hour and almost 20 minutes, and I could use some more water, but I already took my 2 sips of water, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to have a 3rd sip of water. But you know what? I'm the captain of my own ship. Damn it. I'm going to have another sip of water. You're going to just have to find something to do for the next 7 seconds of your life. So there. Totally worth it. Yep. All right. I'm gonna power through. Talk about my app. This app that I'm building, I've affectionately called it Grog. It's like a private self-hosted Instagram clone, but just for one user. So basically, like, I guess like a Flickr Pro sort of thing. But with an idea that the things you post are compatible with Instagram posts. So the single image or a single video, aka a reel, or a carousel of 10 images and videos at particular aspect ratios, and post them to, there'd be an admin view that you have to be logged into. You can post them, you can drag drop them, you replace things, you can write a caption, all that jazz. And then a public facing site that, will show all of those posts. And now this is the reason for building this is I'm building this application for Becky, who has like a lot of videos and images she wants to share on Instagram without being sucked into Instagram all day. I wrote a gem called Feed to Gram, which can look at an RSS, an Atom feed, that has particularly structured entries that have like a caption a figure element that contain one or more images and some data attributes to tell me like, hey, is this a reel or carousel or a story or whatever. And so this Rails app will, in addition to having a public facing website with like permalinks to, hey, this is my post, it will also cross post that to Instagram with the URL back to the main page. And that way it's a form of posse. I'm going to write posse down, get that into the show notes, posse, because it's an example of posting on your own site and syndicating elsewhere. And so I think that's just a healthier way to exist on this modern internet, especially in this diaspora of post-Twitter land. Like, the last thing I want to do is start creating content that I put a lot of time into and has meaning to me, and then just give it to Zuck and hope that they have good backups. But even then, even if they did, you're still at the mercy of the algorithm. And here, this is a way to you own your content. It's on your website. That's the canonical place for it to live. And if it shows up in somebody else's feed by way of some, fancy syndication machination like this, great. They got to see your thing too. So that's how I've been rolling lately for my own stuff. And I'm just doing that for Becky. It was the first time I've used active storage, which is a Rails feature for, uploading large attachments, large, whatever they are, files to something like AWS S3 or Azure or Google, a cloud host of files. And, so far, my impressions are active storage is very mature, has a lot of great features. It's mostly invisible. The configuration is fine, but it's old enough now because it came out with Rails 5, I want to say, which I think was like 2016, maybe 17. It's old enough now that it's got some weird sharp edges. It has this idea of variants. You can make a variant of a file, of an image in particular. And a resize image for a thumbnail is the canonical example. Or make it black and white or sepia toned. Sepia toned? Sepia. You can do basic image processing and then save that variant so that you're not making the same thumbnail over and over again. And you can track that variant. And you can, if a post has a certain number of visuals or images on it, you can there's a scope for with the attached photos or whatever, and it'll track those variants and it'll pull in a gigantic includes, like a left join in SQL terms, so that you're not having the n+1 problem of for every single post that you're showing, you're hitting the database multiple times to go hey, what was that blob key that's out in S3 somewhere? It creates this big polymorphic spread of where all the data is. And so as a result of that, the framework also has a responsibility of helping you not, shoot yourself in the foot with really inefficient querying as you iterate over all of your, say, photos. And it's got these features, but that's confusing. I have found that that auto include the with attached photos thing actually doesn't work in 100% of cases. And then weirdly, even more weirdly, is you can do the same operations for like PDFs and videos, but instead of being called a variant, they are called a preview, and you give the preview a name. And the functionally they're identical. It's just under the covers they use different tools to analyze them, right? Because like you can use like ImageMagick or VIPs to analyze images, but you need like FFmpeg to analyze a video. So like that's like a implementation detail. It shouldn't be my concern as the developer. And yet here I am having, you know, at first what was like, if image, then ask for the variant at 200 by 200. Oh, and else if video, then like ask for the preview with the same name at 200 by 200. But then like there, you know, the framework also provides like a catch-all name called a representation. Like, oh, just ask for the representation called preview. And then like, you know, that works, for example. But then if you ask for it to like also include all these things with attached, you know, visuals, it solves the N+1 problem for images, but not for videos. So like, it's just like, that's what I mean. Rough edges. Like it's old enough now that it feels like it's probably at the time where it could use a good refactor. It could probably use some spring cleaning. And my knock on Rails for years has been a lot of these framework level features, especially the ones that came out in the mid 2015s, were just like stuff that Basecamp needed. And were maybe had like, you know, 1 or 2 at most users before they landed in the framework. And then as the framework, you know, stagnated for a little while there for a few years, those features didn't get a lot of use. And then there was just only really ever like that one maintainer of the feature, like action text. Does anyone, after Javon left, does anyone maintain action text anymore? Like it's a rich text formatting thing for presumably, right? Because like, hey, their mail client needs rich text editing, but like that's the kind of thing, right? This is like, it feels like Rails super popular. Like all of the main cow paths in Rails are used by millions of people, I'm sure, across the world to build applications. But like some of the kind of more peripheral features like active storage and action cable, like I get worried when there's just a lot of sharp edges, especially as time marches on and we suffer bit rot and stuff. So I don't know. That's my initial review on active storage is it gets a thanks, but so I'm fighting with it a little bit more than I want to. There is an incredible thread on Discourse of like how to actually survive using active storage. And it's just like the OP on this thread just like goes to school, takes you to school. And it's super useful. It's fascinating because it's a better introduction than the Rails guides are. It really tells you a lot. So I'll link to both those and you can tell me other thoughts. On the front end side of it, I'm still just like super damn awkward around 2 things. One, Tailwind. I love Tailwind. Tailwind's a great way to style websites because everything is super encapsulated. And so you apply the style in the markup right at the point closest to where it's relevant. And if you need to, instead of having some like goofy other style sheet file and you're trying to like balance them all and cascade everything just perfectly, but you never know, you know, the Peter Griffin and the Blinds gif where like it's kind of, you change one thing over here and now it's over there. Tailwind solves that, like lock, stock, and barrel. It solves that problem. It creates a new problem, which is like now I've got all these mysterious looking classes and I'm copying and pasting them a lot. And that makes me feel dirty. Makes me feel real dirty. And that's not great, but you can abstract that away, right? You could use a component library like Vue component, or you could just use it like a lot of rendering partials, right? Of course, like if you're a React person, everything is a component. This is actually much simpler. And I think Tailwind's more React native. Not React Native, but like native to React in that way. But one place where it falls flat on Rails is that form helpers don't have a super easy way to stylize consistently. So if I'm saying like, you know, form with post and I say f dot input text field, there's no easy way to style that except for onesie twosie, like, give a class and then give a lot of style gunk and then duplicating that. But for this concept of a custom form builder where you extend a form builder and then you define yourself all of the methods of all the different types of things that, might form field types, not just text fields, but like email fields and password fields and number fields and all that. And my friend Daniel Huss was inspired to write a blog post about how to do that based on a technique and a form builder that I'd written for an internal application at Testable. And I'm doing that here too, but it just doesn't feel right. Like it feels like there should be a better solution, or maybe it feels like this should emerge into a gem because Rails ships with Tailwind. So there should be a way to just have a pleasant experience. And if every Rails app is going to have forms in it, especially early on, before you end up having a lot of custom components, like if you're going to ship with Tailwind and also have it be such a blessed path, like it should make it easier. So I don't know. Am I going to contribute that solution? No. Am I going to gripe about it? Yes. That's the breaking change promise right there. Also on the front end, stimulus. I am convinced. I was convinced as soon as I used it. The stimulus and HTMX, I will link both in the show notes, is just like the right solution for most apps most of the time, where you send all the HTML over the wire. This is my website. This is the stuff on the website. There are buttons. And then instead of JavaScript sprinkles just being a file, again, sort of like CSS that like lives over here, and I just try to like hook into the right moments and stuff, and bind to the DOM and re-render stuff into the DOM. Like, it's just like, no, this just lives in your markup. There's these attributes that you put, and they will be responsible for tracking the actions and binding those actions to, event handlers effectively. And if something needs to be re-rendered, then you've got Turbo, which can just re-render just that part of the page if necessary, or re-render the whole page. And now with Turbo 8, just like morph just that, like a client side, just take the part of the DOM that would have changed after that action and then just replace just that part of the DOM. It feels like the right solution. Philosophically, it feels like the right solution most of the time, because the alternative is I build a big custom user interface. It may as well be a fat native application, except it happens to be in a browser tab. And now I have to keep state straight, both in the client and on the server. And I need to build a protocol between the client and the server. And the amount of work that represents is an order of magnitude greater than just HTML over the wire with, the HTML also informing how the interactivity should work, so that the server can re-render in whole or in part the HTML in response to user behavior or in response to changes on the server side. Philosophically, that is the right answer. But man, in practice, I look away for 3 months. I come back to this stuff and I'm like, how the fuck do I do any of this again? I forget all of it, which is usually not the sign of like a bad idea, but like something about the implementation is just like not quite right. Like maybe Turbo 8 will help, at least the Turbo side, but like it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this easy to forget. Great APIs are harder to forget than this. And if I've got a single knock on Rails, it's like there's just so many magical like method names that are auto-constructed and not particularly introspectable because it's, a dynamic language. Sometimes those are dynamic dispatch methods where like they're not actually defined, and so like you can't actually introspect like what was the name of that. I worry that we're never going to get over the hump on this one. Fortunately, so many companies are deciding that they're having a bad time with React that HTMX, another standalone library for accomplishing this, is really picking up steam, and maybe that'll just kind of eat the world, and maybe that works. I haven't really used it, but yeah, I think about that a lot. So anyway, those are the areas of greatest concern as I've gotten started on this application. Because, you can imagine building an Instagram clone. You're going to have a lot of drag drop stuff, a lot of file upload stuff. Like there's just like a lot of front end stuff to want to do. Yeah, you need the carousel, of course, right? Everyone loves a carousel. 10 images and videos mixed together. All right. I'm going to check off the news box. Check. Last stuff. One what have I been up to lately? I started playing Harvest Moon 64. It came to Nintendo Switch's online service if you pay for the expansion pack, but I didn't. Wait, no, I did. I did pay for that, but I also don't really use my Switch very much. I am much more interested in emulating it for some reason. So I'm emulating Harvest Moon 64. It's a farming simulator where you can also, unfortunately, you can only play a gender normative boy, and you can only have hetero straight relations. So if that's not your jam, then this is maybe like a little bit less appealing and nostalgic. And they've made more inclusive games in both this series and Story of Seasons, and of course Stardew Valley later on. But like the pantheon of farming sims that also have a way to, simulate like a lifestyle where you make friends, right, in the community, and maybe you have a romantic partner or two, maybe you have a baby. You can raise cows and chickens and farm and stuff. But for me, the reason I like these farming sim games, that's all gravy. That's fine, whatever. For me, I have to min-max everything. I want to see how much money can I make as fast as possible. How many days in a row can I successfully water every single crop? How much money can I make in a single corn harvest in summer? These are the things that drive me to these games, because they present all of these asymptotic goals where I'm challenging myself to do better. And so one of the things that leads me to is I'm always looking for ways to like effectively hack or work around. Like, for example, the first Harvest Moon game, the nights don't end. Like, it's just like, it becomes like 9 p.m. or something, and it just stays dark. And you can keep playing the game for hours and hours. Like, each day in this game is like 10 minutes. Less than that even. But I keep playing the game for hours on that first night, because when you first get to your farm, it's full of all this shit. It's got, leaves and trees and rocks, and you can bust all that stuff up, and you run out of energy, but then you can run to the hot springs and sit there for a little while, and then you recover the energy, and you go and you bust up some more axes, and you save your state. Again, if you're emulating, you can save your state and come back to it the next day. And like, it might literally take 5 hours just to get through that first day. And then you save, and then on day 2, now you've got a fully clear farm, and you're going to make a lot more money that way. So that's what I mean by min-max. So I've been playing Harvest Moon 64, and I realized that you can actually have get all of your tools upgraded to their max level on the very first day by just hiding inside of a building, because, again, time doesn't pass when you're inside buildings. And I think it was the flower shop and the bar. Spoiler alert, if you haven't tried Harvest Moon 64 yet, which I realize only came out 25 years ago. Spoiler alert. You can just keep on using your axe or your hoe over and over and over and over again. And then when you run out of energy, drink water at either the flower place or flower store, or not flower store, bakery, the bakery during the day, or the bar at night, and just keep drinking water. And drinking water recovers stamina, I guess. The science of these games is fascinating. I don't know who decided that water should restore any amount of stamina, much less an infinite amount if drunk infinitely. There's no, I was impressed that this kid didn't have to relieve himself after drinking what seemed like 5,000 glasses of water in order to shake his water can, whatever it was, 1,200 times to level it up first to silver and then to gold tier. But that's what I did. So I just listened to music and just mashed that button and got all my tools up to the max level on the first night. So that felt pretty good. Now, of course, similar to setting goals for myself, as soon as I got all those tools to max and I saved the game, did I come back to the game and actually play and enjoy it later, afterwards? Of course not. That might be as far as I get this time around. We'll see. But I will die knowing that at least I figured out how to get the tools leveled up quickly. Even though I made no friends and I actually farmed nothing with them. Another thing I've noticed lately is, I suck at YouTube. I have YouTube Premium because I have no patience for ads. And when I make YouTube content, the only reason I want more subscribers is I want to be able to get to 1,000 subscribers with whatever the minimum number of watch hours is, because that's the moment when I can join the YouTube monetization program as a creator. Not so that I can make money on YouTube, because I know it would be peanuts, but because when you're a creator, you can actually mark videos as non-monetized and you can turn off ads. Because when I was doing Searles After Dark, which I suppose I should link to now that I mentioned it, Searles After Dark was a 10-part series I did teaching people, just coding with people, building a thing. I realized only after cutting like 5 hour-and-a-half long episodes of this thing that there was no way for me to prevent other people from seeing ads on my content, because I only have like 500 followers or subscribers. So I'm at like 700 now. So if you go find me on YouTube, just hit subscribe and just like let my videos play. So I can get to 1,000, not for your benefit necessarily, unless you do want to watch my videos, but so that the rest of the internet can enjoy commercial-free Searles content. Because I just think ads suck. So anyway, I suck at using YouTube in part because the recommendation engine doesn't know what to do with me. I'll watch one thing and then I'll get a million of that thing. Instead, I love hearing feel free to email podcast@searles.co if you've got a YouTube channel that you really love. I think I watch like a lot of the highly produced ones at this point. I think I've landed on a lot of those, but I got recommended this one called Bullets and Blockbusters, and I really like it. As an 80s kid, he covers a lot of history of blockbuster movies, as well as alternate histories like production snafus, and not just like the story of like how a movie got made, which is those can be interesting human interest stories, but also like, well, the original script for this would have gone this way, or here's how this film would have gone when it had this original director. And hearing those alternate histories of how Tarantino was in the running to do a new Star Trek movie after Star Trek Beyond failed at the box office. Like, what would a Tarantino Star Trek movie have been like? That kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a great YouTube channel to kind of, I'm catching up on his backlog. Watching a couple Apple TV shows. Watching Foundation finally. Foundation season 1. I heard it was really slow, and so then I watched it, and then it was really slow. But I'm almost done. I'm almost through season 1, which felt like homework, which is actually honestly like the most faithful adaptation you could have to Isaac Asimov's Foundation books, because I tried reading those books, and those books also felt like homework. So I don't know if that's like, if you can really knock it. Good job. You made a boring thing. Anyway, I hear that season 2 really picks up steam, but of course it's not going to make any sense if you haven't watched season 1. So like, I'm glad that the show creators took the notes, but I can't imagine that Apple's going to make a whole lot of money on the backside of people who like, oh, hey, maybe there's a YouTube channel for that. Like, here's the 15 minutes of video that covers all 5 things that happened over 10 episodes of season 1. But it's got a cool vibe. I usually, because I'm so broken in my heart, every night I play a video game and I watch a show simultaneously so that I get enough stimulation to just stay wired. And that's why I am the way I am. And I've been doing that since I was in high school. So I was working actually at high school, I was working at Blockbuster and EB Games, now GameStop, simultaneously, which meant I got 5 video and game rentals a week and also like a deep discount on games. And maybe that's where I started watching movies and playing games simultaneously. But yeah, Foundation. Do I recommend it? No. But it's good. It's very well produced. And if you don't value your time, you should totally watch Foundation. As someone who doesn't value their time. Monarch is the other show I've been watching. It's the story behind the monsters, as if like, like whenever there's a story behind something that's like really like kind of dim and uninteresting, I'm like, I didn't know there would be a story. And so I think the appeal of the show of like, the people behind Godzilla's discovery and keeping us safe from all of the kaiju titans or whatever. I'm like, oh, I mean, clearly they had to come up with something. Maybe it'll be interesting. I watched it and boy, it is maybe the first miss that I've seen on Apple TV. I really enjoy a lot of Apple TV shows. Lots of good stuff, but boy, is it just like, and not only is it kind of dreadful, but like there's a couple Japanese characters and they speak perfectly fine Japanese, and that's all interesting and stuff. But like the culture, like some of the cultural stuff just seems like really ham-fisted, like, you know, marching into one's apartment and not taking their shoes off. Like I've never seen anyone do that ever. Right. Or filming in locations where there's no Genkan in the front of a house. Like you walk in, it's just like all hardwood floors with no like, you know, recessed area to place one's shoes and pop in. Like little things like that. There's just dozens of them. Like these are Japanese actors speaking in Japanese. Like no one had an honest conversation with the director. So, all right. Do I recommend Monarch? No. But if you just need to hit play on something, is it a show? Yes. That's the seal of approval from me. It is a show. Also watching some Shoresy, because I heard Letterkenny's next season is going to be its last. And so Shoresy season 2, which is a spinoff of Letterkenny. If you don't know what either of these things are, comedies in Canada and Ontario. I think most famous, not only for being irreverent and funny humor, kind of like the Ottawa equivalent of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, maybe, but also less plot coherence, but also closer to sketch comedy, to be honest. But also what they do is they have all these little phrases and jargon from their area, some real, some made up, and the characters are all over the top. So anyway, I like Shoresy. And that's about it. I think that just about does this. This is the part, just so you know, I'm checking off the podcast stuff I like. Checkbox. And I'm now onto the mailbag where I just have no mail because I've never told anyone to email me until now. So shoot me an email, podcast@searles.co. And if you email me, I will read it. And if I make another one of these, version 2, if you will, I will read it on the show and then I will talk about it. So that's all we got. That's all she wrote. I hope you have a wonderful day, week, month, quarter, etc. And yeah, thanks for mowing the lawn with me or doing the laundry with me or whatever it is that you're doing. I hope somebody was mowing the lawn because then they'd feel, oh my, how do you know? And the answer is I used to mow the lawn. And then I moved to Florida, and now my lawn is like 3 inches wide. Anyway, that's all I got. You have a good one. Get out of here.